Israel got what it wanted. It's ethnic cleansing. They just kind of target the communities that are resisting. International law isn't there. It's there to protect Western interests. It died in 1947 when the UN decided to partition Palestine against the will of its people.
Moataz Salim, he's a Palestinian writer, activist, a doctoral student from Gaza, advocating for an end to the genocide perpetuated by Netanyahu and the Israeli government. And he's been a long-time advocate for Palestinian liberation. Talk a little bit about your family. You mentioned that you've lost family on both sides.
My family, there's no trace of them in Gaza anymore. My extended family on my father's side, I've lost many of them. Even on my mom's side, I've lost several cousins of mine.
And I'm privileged to have Moataz Salim with us today to share his story. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
As I said to my last guest, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances, but at the same time, I'm grateful to connect and to share the story. Talk a little bit about what led you to make that Instagram video, and because our listeners haven't seen it yet, our viewers haven't seen it. So if you could summarize the key points of that for them to understand the situation, I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So I was doing a I was in a doctoral program. I was doing what's called a doctorate of psychology, which is kind of similar. It's like in psychology, we have PhDs and PsyDs. And so I was at the George Washington University. It's called the professional program, the professional psychology program. And I had been in it for about 2 years. And essentially, I mean, I won't go into too much detail about like my very early time in the program, but actually what happened, the first thing that really encouraged me to be super outspoken even before the genocide began was that my supervisor in the program was targeted by um, these students who identify as Zionists and are very supportive of Israel. And I saw sort of this huge kind of media smear campaign, very like coordinated and whatnot. And my supervisor had for many, many years been very outspoken about it. I personally, at that time, I mean, I've always had kind of this political outlook, but I think a lot of people of my background can understand this sentiment. We're told by our parents to kind of keep it on the low, like because of a very realistic, and I mean, what ended up happening to me is proof of this, that you will get targeted, you'll get marked, and kind of
Yeah.
there'll be an effort to sort of try to repress and silence your voice.
So, what's the situation now? It sounds like from your Instagram video, you've been essentially removed from the program and have been given a pretty ridiculous list of things you need to do
Yeah.
to get consideration for readmission. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So essentially, we just to kind of summarize what was kind of the final straw, so to speak, we had a guest speaker come in who had not in the talk, but later I would find that online they identified as a Zionist, a radical Zionist, in fact. And it was clear to me in the talk because it's I still find it just so insane that they came to give a talk on decolonialism.
Wow.
And it was almost like rubbing salt in the wound, like, and this is over 600 days of genocide later, and they're here to give a talk on decolonialism. And almost like an hour and a half into the talk, I still hadn't heard anything about genocide, about the what I consider the most prominent decolonial effort in the world right now, for Palestinian liberation. And it was really funny. They even started with a land acknowledgement that they live on stolen land in Seattle, but neglected to mention any other stolen land.
Yeah.
And so I confronted them quite strongly. And it actually ended up being like a 15-minute back and forth where they asserted that they are indigenous to what they consider their ancestral homeland in Israel. They asserted that I, myself, as someone who has lost family members, many, like dozens of family members in Gaza, that I have no idea what Zionism is, that I am misrepresenting it, and there were many other things kind of said back and forth. But the part that I really try to talk about is that when, like, they in front of me said that they are indigenous to the land, and kind of in that same tone tried to negate my own
Yeah.
indigeneity to that
Yeah.
land, and the very real experiences that, and it's something you always see about, like, kind of the hypothetical versus material reality of what's happening to the Palestinian people. They tried to feign some sympathy, and I told them, like, if you really, really, like, you are watching those same videos and you feel bad, you would be comfortable renouncing Zionism on the spot. Um, Given that it's just, a political ideology at the end of the day, a genocidal one. And they refused. So it kind of, so that happens. And then,
And this escalates to your removal from the program.
yes, so I had it in the back of my head that, something was going to come after me. And in fact, I warned my, the dean of the program, essentially like the program director. I warned my advisor in the program, telling them that I do fear that something might be coming my way. I'm not sure, but I told them very, very upfront that, like, you need to protect me if this happens. A month later, a month after this interaction, I am literally in the middle of class, and I received the letter, which clearly outlines. It says you've been suspended. And it says that if I am on any GW property, I will be arrested on site.
Hmm.
So cue me just scrambling my things in the middle of class and, like, literally sprinting, running away from class because I don't want to be arrested. Um,
Mortifying. I mean, this is mortifying, and I'm angered for a number of reasons. The least of which is not that in Florida, at a Florida University of Florida Law School, a white supremacist wrote a paper on how the Constitution does not include non-white people, specifically that it doesn't include Jewish people or Black people, and
mm,
should only represent white men. And not only was he not suspended, not only was he not given a failing grade, in fact, he was given the highest grade in the class and then given the book award in recognition of his brilliant paper. And then the university defended it as free speech. And the law professor, who's also a federal judge appointed by Trump, defended it as a powerful statement of the value of free speech. This is a man advocating actively for genocide, and he's
yeah,
celebrated and praised, whereas in your case, you're advocating against genocide and you're punished for that.
yeah.
It's outrageous and it is absolutely infuriating. Moataz, talk a little bit about your family because I know we were talking off air and you mentioned that you've lost family on both sides. Your father lived in Gaza, is from Palestine. Your mother is
Mhm.
from southern Lebanon, which is being bombed on a regular. As we're recording this, and reports just came out that the Netanyahu regime, this is journalist Mohammed Shahada reporting this, that Israel just bombed the very Gazan church that Pope Francis used to call on a daily basis during
Yeah.
his lifetime. They injured the very priest, Gabriel Romanelli, who used to update the Pope on the situation. Two churchgoers were killed, six wounded. And so, for anyone who thinks this is a Muslim versus Jewish thing, you're completely not only
Uh,
misinformed, but you're maliciously misinformed.
yeah.
These are Palestinian Christians being murdered by the Israeli government right now. This is not a Muslim versus Christian thing. This is not a so-called Judeo-Christian war against Muslims or Islam. This is an autocratic fascist regime committing genocide, rather committing a Holocaust on innocent civilians. And we need to call it out for what it is. So I'm sorry, I got on a rant there, but I really want to hear about your family. I know you've lost loved ones, so I want to be sensitive not to ask you to go too personal, but whatever you're comfortable sharing with our audience, I think people need to hear the ground reality of what's happening.
Yeah. I would say your analysis is correct in the sense that it's definitely not a religious war. I in on my dad's side, so I have like all my extended family on my father's side are pretty much were in Gaza. And I've lost many of them. Yeah, on like the number is over 100. I'll be candid about that, and it's I'll say it like I didn't know all of them, but I knew a lot of them, and I was very close to some of them, like my cousin Iman, Jenna, Jinan, and I will say this. I mean, I don't, my family as of now no longer like they don't, there's no trace of them in Gaza anymore because they have either been killed by Israel or a lot of us who are not there have raised funds for them to, the ones that were remaining to escape. And so there's, as far as my family goes in Gaza, the Israel got what it wanted, it's ethnic cleansing or they killed them. And even on my mom's side, I've lost several cousins of mine, one who I was very, very, very dear to me. And it was kind of, the same thing of they were just like none of these people picked up a gun. None of them, they were just people living on their land that they have lived on, their families have lived on for generations, and they were targeted for whatever reason. And that Israel doesn't really have any need for a reason. They just kind of target the communities that are resisting. And for a lot of these people, they consist of sort of the popular base for the movements that are resisting Israeli hegemony. And it's very, very asymmetrical in the sense that it's just people doing whatever they can to stay on their land and to fight off this Western backed aggression that has reached sort of a climax point.
I often point out to folks that if you honestly believe that this began on 10/7, then you haven't been paying attention at all.
No, I
Um,
I try to remind people of this all the time, especially when it comes to, I think a lot of people now have really, really realized that international law isn't there to really, it's there to protect Western interests first and foremost. But it really, if you really want to go back to when it actually died, as it pertains to this case, it died in 1947 when the UN decided to partition Palestine against the will of its people. They're like,
Against the will of the world. If you
yes,
get
yeah,
a chance to listen to the speech given by Sir Muhammad Zafrullah Khan, who was a Pakistani lawyer and scholar, one of my heroes growing up, the lecture he was president of the UN General Assembly at the time. And if you
yeah,
listen to his remarks, he makes explicitly clear that you are punishing the Palestinians for the crimes of Europe. You are putting Palestine on the cross and crucifying Palestine for the crimes of Europe. He acknowledges the horrors that the Jewish people suffered through in the Holocaust under Hitler's regime. He acknowledges the genocide that they suffered through and the atrocities that they suffered through. And he points out that punishing Palestine is not the answer. He goes, if it really was about a safe homeland for the Jewish people, you can establish one in the United States. They have plenty of land to give. You
Mhm.
can establish one in much of the world. But why are
Yeah,
you punishing this particular community?
yeah.
Not to mention, and he adds to the fact that even during the Holocaust, it was the Palestinian people who willingly took in Jewish refugees because throughout history, since the advent of Islam, it was only under Muslim rule that Jewish people were safe in Palestine. Under
Mhm.
Christian rule, they were crucified, exiled, tortured, and forced to convert. And throughout the centuries since, it was only under Muslim rule. And so, the history of this has been so thwarted and misdirected as a means to justify this genocide right
Yeah.
now.
And
Um,
I would just add to your point. I mean, I do agree with the framing that like we've been made to pay for the crimes of Europe, but Zionism as a political ideology, as a political movement, existed way before the Holocaust.
it did.
And it kind of reached, it really was able to gain power when in the advent of the Holocaust, and all of a sudden they had this um rationale for you know taking Palestine and making it into Israel. And I never picked I don't pick who my oppressors are or who killed my family members. And and that's to say, like, to all the smears of like it's like Jew hate or anti-Semitism. I mean, it's just it's gotten to a point where it's beyond absurd. It's like
Yeah.
I don't pick who my oppressor is or
I will say this, and let me know if you've experienced the same or differently. I will say this. In my circle, some of the most vociferous advocates for Palestinian liberation and justice are my Jewish friends, are Jewish scholars, are Jewish
yeah.
rabbis who recognize that what is being done is not in the name of Judaism, it's not in the name of
Mhm.
Jewish people. It is in the name of a political ideology that we need to separate from the religion of Judaism. And I'm
Mhm.
proud of the fact that I have so many Jewish amazing people in my life who are unapologetic and unequivocal about this. And there's some very prominent Jewish voices. Mandy
Mhm.
Patinkin just came out with a powerful statement to all Jewish people that,
Yeah.
anyone who's still silent on this, you're betraying your Jewish values.
Yeah.
We need to be honest about that. I mean, that's been my experience. What's your experience been in that space?
That's also been my experience. I mean, for the most part. And I think, like, I'm glad you mentioned the Mandy Patinkin
Yeah,
quote, because I think I don't think it's my place to tell the Jewish community that they have a huge problem in terms of this ideology that's taken a hold and taken a grip in most of their institutions and the like. And so I'm glad that he made that.
yeah,
I mean, I am already kind of at capacity with trying to deal with what's happening in my own life, witnessing 650 days of genocide at this point, and trying to, help out my family there as much as possible. But I do think that I do think it's important to make mention of this, which is that yes, there are a lot of people, like a lot of people in who are like I have a lot of Jewish friends who are very anti-Zionist and principled in their anti-Zionism. I think it's just scary for me that like a lot of these larger institutions in the country, in the US especially, have been so thoroughly captured by Zionism. And frankly, I don't know what the answer is to kind of fight that. I don't think it's the responsibility should fall on me. And I just say that to say, like, I was really happy to see that, because you have this prominent Jewish figure talking to their community, telling them like what the hell is going on? Like
yeah.
this is being done in our name. And I think that's important to point out. And we like in even in my own advocacy for Palestine, for, getting people to understand anti-Zionism, we always make that distinction between Zionism and Judaism. And yet the state itself puts in every effort, like when they destroy towns and cities in Gaza, you'll see pictures of bulldozers putting the Star of David. We've seen prisoners kind of have the Star of David carved into their skin.
That's
I'm
right.
just horrific, horrific
Mass
stuff.
systemic grip. I often point out, like the very simple distinction is one is a 4,000-year-old religion and the other is a
Mhm,
150-year-old political ideology. You can't
mhm.
compare the two. It's two very different
Yes.
things, and to conflate them is to do an injustice to the beauty of the Jewish people and the beauty of the religion of Judaism. Moataz, we're out of time, but I wanted to keep an open invitation to come back at any time and keep sharing these stories. We need to elevate these stories. And I'll ask you before you go, how can listeners and viewers follow you and support your work and support your advocacy?
Sure. So my Instagram is at Taz SDC, TAZSDC. You can follow me there. And I kind of just write here and there. I'm right now trying to figure out what's next in my career, in my life. And so if anyone listening, you have kind of some connection, whatever, whether it be in psychology or just anything to do with this huge, like this, like you said, modern day Holocaust, I would really appreciate that. So and
Beautifully
don't
said.
keep donating to Gaza. That is very important.
Yes. Yes, there's amazing organizations that we should continue to work with to ensure we're elevating the people of Gaza. Moataz Salim, thank you for being with us today. We hope to have you back soon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.